They'd warned her 8 years ago. Walk away, keep quiet, and your daughter lives. Sarah Blake had walked away, resigned her commission, buried the evidence, raised Emma in a small Kansas town where nobody knew her rank or what she'd discovered. But corrupt colonels don't retire. Arms smuggling rings don't disband. And when the operation Sarah had almost exposed grew into a global network, Emma became leverage. Now Sarah had 72 hours to do what she should have done 8 years ago. Finish the mission, even if it meant going to war with the very military she'd once served. Welcome to Open Book Stories. Before we begin this intense tale of maternal fury, buried corruption, and a mother who became an army of one, tell me in the comments, what city are you watching from today? And if you believe stories like this deserve to be told, hit that subscribe button. These stories matter. Lawrence, Kansas. Population 95,000, home to the University of Kansas, and exactly the kind of place where you could disappear into normalcy if you tried hard enough. Sarah Blake had been trying for 8 years. She was 45 now, worked as an accountant at a local firm, lived in a modest 2-bedroom house on the west side of town. Her daughter Emma was 12 in 7th grade, excelling in math and playing club soccer. They had a routine: school, homework, dinner together every night, weekend trips to the library or the park. It was aggressively normal, intentionally unremarkable. The life Sarah had chosen after walking away from everything she'd been. What the people of Lawrence didn't know, what Emma herself only partially understood, was that Sarah had once been Captain Sarah Blake, Army Intelligence Officer assigned to the Judge Advocate General's Corps, investigating military procurement fraud. 8 years ago, Sarah had stumbled onto something that went far beyond procurement fraud. She'd discovered evidence of a corruption ring operating at the highest levels of military logistics. Colonels and contractors working together to divert military equipment, falsify shipping records, and sell weapons and technology to the highest bidder. The evidence had been overwhelming. Shipping manifests that didn't match inventory, equipment lost in transit, that showed up in conflict zones where it was never supposed to be. Financial transactions between military officers and shell companies connected to arms dealers. Sarah had compiled everything into a classified report, prepared to present it to her superiors. That's when the threats started. First, anonymous. Drop the investigation. Then specific. Captain Blake, you have a 4-year-old daughter. It would be terrible if something happened to her. Sarah had gone to her commanding officer, a full colonel she'd trusted. He'd listened to her concerns, reviewed her evidence, and told her he'd handle it personally. 2 days later, Sarah's car had been tampered with. Brake lines cut. Easily could have killed her if she hadn't noticed during her pre-drive inspection. The message was clear. The corruption went higher than she'd realized, and Emma was the leverage they'd used to silence her. So Sarah had made a choice. She'd encrypted all her evidence, hidden it on secure servers with dead-man switches, and resigned her commission. She'd taken Emma and moved to Kansas, as far from military installations as she could get, while staying in the continental U.S. For 8 years, it had worked. No contact from her past, no threats, just accounting work and soccer games, and the slow healing of learning to be just a mother instead of an officer. Until yesterday afternoon at 3:47 p.m., when Emma should have been picked up from school but wasn't there. Sarah's phone rang at 4:15 p.m. Unknown number. Mrs. Blake? A man's voice, professional, cold. Who is this? Someone who remembers Captain Blake very well. You've been living a nice, quiet life. That was the deal, wasn't it? Stay quiet, and your daughter stays safe. Sarah's blood went cold. Where's Emma? Somewhere you'll never find her. Unless you do exactly what we tell you. Sarah was already moving, grabbing her keys, heading for her car. Her training kicked in automatically. Record the call, note details, prepare for action. What do you want? 8 years ago, you compiled evidence against certain individuals. We need that evidence destroyed. All copies, every server, every backup, every insurance policy you thought would protect you. I'll need proof Emma's alive. Of course. A pause, then Emma's voice, shaking but clear. Mom? Mom? I'm scared. The line went dead. Sarah sat in her car, hands gripping the steering wheel, mind racing through scenarios. This was a tactical situation now. Hostage rescue. Time sensitive. But she had no backup, no authority, no resources except what she could improvise. Her phone buzzed. A text message with a photo. Emma, tied to a chair in what looked like a warehouse, unharmed but terrified. And below it, 72 hours. Delete everything. We'll be watching. If you contact police or FBI, she dies. If you try to find her, she dies. Comply and she lives. Sarah stared at the photo, at her daughter's face. Then she opened her laptop, always in her car, always encrypted, and accessed the servers where she'd hidden the evidence 8 years ago. If she deleted it, Emma might live. But she'd learned in intelligence that kidnappers who took hostages for silence rarely let them go. Emma had seen faces, heard voices. She was a witness now, which meant compliance was a death sentence. Sarah had one other option. Find Emma before the 72-hour deadline, eliminate the threat, and finish what she'd started 8 years ago. She pulled up her encrypted files and began planning an operation. Sarah's first call was to someone she'd hoped never to contact again. Lieutenant Colonel James Martinez, retired, who'd served with her in Iraq before their intelligence assignments. Martinez had left the military under circumstances that were never fully explained, but Sarah suspected he'd also gotten too close to the corruption. Martinez, it's Blake. A long pause. Jesus, Sarah? I thought you were buried. I was. They dug me up. Sarah kept her voice controlled, professional. My daughter's been taken. Same people we were investigating 8 years ago. I need your help. Sarah, those people, they're bigger now, more connected. I've been tracking them since I got out. The corruption ring you found. It's grown into an international arms trafficking network. They're moving military equipment to conflict zones, selling to cartels, terrorist groups, anyone with money. Give me names. Colonel Richard Vance, still active duty, now stationed at Pentagon Procurement. Major General Thomas Burke, retired but consulting for defense contractors. And the civilian side, Victor Reyes, runs a logistics company that's actually a front for moving illegal weapons. Sarah typed notes as Martinez talked. Where would they keep a hostage? Reyes has warehouses all over. But if they're holding your daughter, they'll keep her somewhere isolated. Probably one of Burke's properties. He owns land in Montana, uses it for hunting trips that are actually meetings with buyers. Send me everything you have. Locations, associates, financial records. Sarah, you can't do this alone. Let me bring in some people. No, they're watching. Anyone I contact, anyone who helps me, puts Emma at greater risk. I need intelligence, not operators. Martinez was quiet then. "You were the best intelligence officer I ever worked with. If anyone can do this, it's you. I'll send you everything." "But Sarah, these people have killed to protect their operation. They won't hesitate with a 12-year-old. "Neither will I." She hung up and opened her laptop. Martinez's files started arriving. Encrypted emails, financial transactions, property records. Sarah spread them across her screen and began the analysis she'd been trained to do. The network was sophisticated. Military officers providing cover and access. Contractors handling logistics. Reyes's company moving the weapons through legitimate shipping channels. Money laundered through defense contracts and offshore accounts. And Emma was leverage to keep the one person who'd ever gotten close to exposing them permanently silent. Sarah pulled up property records for Burke's Montana land. 2,400 acres in the mountains, accessible by a single private road. Hunting lodge, outbuildings, perfect isolation. If she was holding a hostage she didn't want found, that's where she'd go. She had 68 hours. Sarah drove through the night, arriving in Montana by dawn. She'd stopped only once, at a storage unit she'd maintained under a false name since leaving the military. Inside were things an accountant didn't need, but an intelligence officer might. Tactical gear, communications equipment, weapons she'd kept just in case. The .45 pistol felt foreign and familiar in her hands. 8 years since she'd carried it. But muscle memory didn't fade. Burke's property was remote, which helped. Sarah parked 5 miles away and approached on foot, using terrain and cover the way she'd been trained. By midday, she'd established an observation post on a ridge overlooking the main lodge. She counted 4 guards on rotating patrols. Professional security, probably military contractors. 1 SUV parked by the lodge, 1 pickup truck near the outbuildings. No sign of Emma, but smoke coming from the lodge chimney suggested occupation. Sarah spent 12 hours observing, mapping patrol patterns, identifying vulnerabilities. By night, she'd identified the optimal insertion point, a blind spot in the guard rotation near the back of the lodge. But she couldn't just extract Emma and run. These people had resources, connections. They'd find them again. Sarah needed to end this permanently, which meant gathering evidence while she was here. At 02 Edward hours, Sarah moved in. She neutralized the first guard silently. Non-lethal takedown, zip-tied and gagged. The second guard she avoided entirely, using the patrol gap she'd identified. The back door to the lodge had an alarm system, but it was older technology, the kind Sarah had trained to bypass. Inside, the lodge was dark except for emergency lighting. Sarah moved through with her weapon drawn, clearing rooms systematically. 3 bedrooms on the second floor, 2 occupied. Guards sleeping. She left them, focused on finding Emma. The basement door was locked from the outside. Sarah picked it in 40 seconds. Emma was there, tied to a chair just like in the photo. Alone, unguarded. When she saw Sarah, her eyes went wide. "Mom?" Sarah knelt quickly, cutting the restraints. "Are you hurt?" "No, I'm okay. How did you—" "Later. We need to move." Sarah handed Emma a small radio. "If I say run, you run for the woods. North. I'll find you." But as they reached the basement stairs, lights flooded on throughout the lodge. Captain Blake. A voice from above. "I was hoping you'd come. Made this much easier." Standing at the top of the basement stairs was Colonel Richard Vance. Sarah recognized him from photos Martinez had sent. Older now, but the same cold eyes that had looked the other way when she'd tried to report the corruption 8 years ago. "You really should have stayed buried," Vance said. Behind him, 4 armed contractors took positions. "We gave you a choice, a life for silence. You chose the hard way." Sarah kept Emma behind her, her weapon trained on Vance. "Let her go. Your problem is with me. Your daughter is a witness now. She's seen too much. She's 12 years old. She doesn't know anything. She knows you're alive. She knows we took her. That's enough." Vance descended 2 steps. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to delete those files right now while we watch. Then we're going to make both of you disappear." Clean ending to a messy problem. Sarah's mind calculated odds. 5 armed men, superior position, her daughter as collateral. Tactically impossible. But she'd been in impossible situations before. "The files aren't just mine," Sarah said. "I have partners, verification systems. If I don't check in every 24 hours, everything goes to the FBI, Department of Defense Inspector General, and the Washington Post." "Bullshit. You've been hiding for 8 years. You don't have partners? Martinez, Sergeant Chen, Captain Rodriguez, all former intelligence, all with their own copies." Sarah was bluffing, but she sold it with the confidence of someone stating facts. "Kill us, and you guarantee exposure." Vance hesitated, uncertainty flickering across his face. That's when the windows exploded. The flashbangs went off simultaneously. Military precision. Perfect timing. Sarah had called in backup after all. She'd just been careful about it. Martinez hadn't come alone. He'd brought a team of retired operators, all with scores to settle against the corruption they'd witnessed. They'd been positioning since Sarah began her infiltration, waiting for her signal, which she'd sent via encrypted text from the basement. In the chaos of light and sound, Sarah grabbed Emma and ran for the exit. Behind them, she heard gunfire, shouting, the controlled violence of operators who'd done this 1,000 times. They made it to the woods before Vance's contractors could reorganize. Martinez appeared beside them, night vision goggles up, weapon ready. "You good?" "Emma's safe. That's what matters." "Burke and Reyes are at a warehouse in Seattle. If you want to finish this?" "I do." Martinez looked at Emma. "Can't take her with us." "I know." Sarah turned to her daughter. Mr. Martinez has a friend, Army captain, retired. She's going to take you somewhere safe while I finish this. Do you trust me?" Emma, who'd been silent through the entire extraction, finally spoke. "You're not really an accountant, are you?" "No, baby." "I'm not. What are you?" Sarah looked at Martinez, then back at her daughter. "Someone who protects people from bad men." "I always have been." Emma nodded, understanding more than Sarah had credited. "Then go protect people, Mom. I'll be okay." After Emma was secured with Martinez's contact, Sarah and the team headed for Seattle. The warehouse was a front for Reyes's shipping operation, and where Burke was meeting buyers. The operation took 4 hours. Systematic, professional, the kind of direct action Sarah had once coordinated but never executed. By dawn, Burke and Reyes were in federal custody, along with 15 of their associates. More importantly, Sarah had recovered everything she needed: financial records, shipping manifests, communication logs, evidence of an arms trafficking network that had operated for over a decade, moved hundreds of millions in illegal weapons, and compromised dozens of military officers. The Pentagon investigation took 6 months. What Sarah had delivered, combined with Martinez's years of independent research, unraveled the largest military corruption scandal in modern U.S. history. 17 officers were court-martialed. Colonel Vance received a life sentence for arms trafficking, conspiracy, and attempted murder. Major General Burke died in federal custody before trial, officially a heart attack. Though Sarah suspected the network had silenced him, Victor Reyes turned informant, exposing connections to cartels and terrorist organizations. His testimony led to international arrests and the seizure of weapons shipments worth over $200 million. And Sarah Blake, who'd spent 8 years as a small-town accountant, found herself testifying before Congress, briefing the Secretary of Defense, and receiving recognition she'd never wanted. The Medal of Honor ceremony was held at the White House. Sarah stood in her old dress uniform, feeling like an imposter. Emma sat in the front row, proud and confused in equal measure. The president spoke about courage, integrity, sacrificing everything to expose corruption. Sarah barely heard it. She was thinking about the 8 years she'd lost, the danger she'd put Emma in, the choice that had seemed so simple: walk away to protect her daughter, but had only delayed the inevitable confrontation. After the ceremony, Emma asked the question Sarah had been dreading. "Did you really want to be an accountant?" "No, I wanted to be your mom. The accounting was just camouflage." "But you're not going back to that now?" Sarah looked at her daughter, 12 years old, resilient, braver than Sarah had realized. "No, the Army wants me back. Not active duty, but consulting, helping root out corruption, training investigators, making sure what happened to us can't happen to anyone else." "That sounds more like you." "You're okay with that?" Emma thought about it. "I'm okay with you being honest about who you are and what you do. The hiding, that's what scared me, not knowing if it was real." Sarah pulled her daughter into a hug. "Everything about us is real. The job changes, but being your mom, that's who I am first. Even when you're in war zones catching bad guys, especially then." 2 years later, Sarah ran a special investigations unit within Army intelligence. Her team focused exclusively on internal corruption, the cases other investigators were afraid to touch. Emma was 14 now, thriving despite, or perhaps because of, the trauma she'd survived. She understood her mother's work, understood that sometimes protecting people meant confronting danger rather than hiding from it. Sarah's unit had exposed corruption in procurement, contracting, and logistics across 3 continents. They'd recovered stolen equipment, identified compromised officers, and dismantled trafficking networks that had operated for years. One afternoon, Sarah received a call from a junior officer, a captain who'd discovered irregularities in equipment manifests and didn't know who to trust. "Ma'am, I found something, but I'm afraid if I report it through channels, you come directly to me," Sarah interrupted. "That's why this unit exists, to be the channel people can trust." After the call, Sarah looked at the photo on her desk. Emma at a soccer tournament, smiling and muddy and exactly where she should be. Safe because Sarah had chosen to fight rather than hide. The decoration on Sarah's wall, the Medal of Honor, framed alongside her intelligence badge, represented more than personal recognition. It represented a promise. Corruption would be exposed, traffickers would be stopped, and the military she'd served would be protected from the enemies within. Because Sarah Blake had learned something during those 72 hours when Emma's life hung in the balance. You can't negotiate with evil, you can't hide from corruption, and you can't protect the people you love by running. Sometimes, the only way to keep your family safe is to eliminate the threat completely. And Sarah Blake had proven she was very, very good at eliminating threats. So, now I ask you, have you known someone who sacrificed everything to expose corruption? Someone who couldn't stay silent, even when silence meant safety? Someone who proved that maternal love is the most dangerous force in the world when you threaten a mother's child? Share their story in the comments. Tell us about the whistleblowers, the fighters, the mothers who became warriors because that's what their families needed. If this story moved you, subscribe to Open Book Stories. We publish powerful narratives about those who fight impossible battles, who expose corruption at personal cost, and who prove that sometimes one person can change everything. We'll see you in the next story. And remember, the most dangerous enemy is the one who has something worth fighting for.